Welcome in, welcome once again to the newest edition of 3 In, 3 Out, the most unique Seahawks recap show in the multiverse. It is, of course, still the offseason, so this is not a recap show. We talked about this last time. This is just part of the Seahawkers podcast. This is like an offseason of destiny. I was going to say density, but offseason of destiny, boys. So if this is 3 In, 3 Out, and if I'm Clinton Bonner, then you know I'm joined by the one, the only, the great Brandon Schultz, and back to back, we got the Montana Seahawker, Adam Emmerich. Boys, last time we did a little floor versus ceiling. We went through 6 categories, hence 3 In, 3 Out, and we got a lot of nice comments. A lot of folks saying, love this format, great dialogue. So we thought the show's so nice, might as well do it twice. 6 new categories. We're fired up. Brandon, how you doing today, dude?
I'm well, man. I'm excited because we are just 3 weeks away. Well, less than 3 weeks by the time this comes out to the launch of Seahawks training camp. So it's practically football season. Here we are.
You bet. It's 3 weeks away from the beginnings of a championship type season here. It's going to be pretty cool. So ceilings and floors today, Clinton. I'm taking all the ceilings and nobody can talk me off. I don't even care.
I don't think this is how this works.
No, I just did it.
Yeah, that's it. That was an alpha
you call
move.
dibs on ceilings?
Yeah. It's like hopping in a long road trip. You call it shotgun, and what can you do? The man called shotgun. Well, in fairness, last time Adam took the floor first and deferred, right? So Brandon, you ended up with the ceiling last time. So I think it is only natural and fair that Adam, you could start this time with a ceiling. Let's get right into it. So, by the way, I do encourage folks, go back and watch the last one. It's not, the last one's like 10 days old, and it's not outdated by any means. So we go through 6 awesome categories, and again, people seem to really dig it. So happy to do it once again. And for this one, Adam, I want to talk about a particular player who is very intriguing for the most part. First year, basically a redshirt year. Second year, a lot of sacks. Third year, 9.5, a lot of sacks, but not all that much playing time, and really couldn't stop the run all that well. And we're talking about Darrell Taylor. So what the heck is going to happen, and what is his real true year 3, year 4 as a Seahawk with the injury? And I want to look at Darrell Taylor snap percentage. So again, last year, 9.5 sacks, only 3 sacks in the first 10 games. The dude had 6.5 sacks down the stretch the last 6 games. He also forced 4 fumbles. So this is a guy who makes plays, sometimes in bunches, but he does make plays out there. Now that's the good. Kind of the ugly is he only played 478 snaps last year. That's 29 snaps a game. That's about 42% of the snaps. He missed 1 game last year, so he played 16 games. When you compare that to Nwosu, just to look at like a high mark for an edge, Nwosu was 78% of the game he was in, about 54 snaps per game. So where is Taylor? What's his ceiling? What do you think, Adam?
Ceiling in terms of snap counts or sacks?
Yeah. Wait, I thought you said something else. Snap percentage, right? So snap counts, snap percentage. We could do the math from there.
Okay. And you said he was at 42 this last year. Is that
42% last year?
Yeah, that's absolutely the ceiling.
That's his ceiling. Can't go higher.
Yeah, wow. I don't see it being much more than that. Just because they brought in Derek Hall in the draft, and I think they're really excited about him. Darrell's had his opportunities, and unfortunately, his body's just not cooperating in a lot of ways, and that's kept him off the field. And then, he's been on the field, while effective as a pass rusher, not the greatest against the run, and a bit of a liability. And I think that's why you saw his snap counts basically where they were for this last year. With Mafe with another year to improve, and like I said, with Hall coming in, and then even Tyreek Smith, the kid out of Ohio State that they drafted last year, who was injured all year, another guy that I think they're going to be very interested to see. So I don't see a big increase for Darrell. I think he's kind of getting into D. Eskridge range.
Ooh, that's some dangerous range, because Eskridge has exactly, I think, 1 touchdown in his NFL career, and Taylor has proven that he can get to the quarterback. All right, well that's I would say a fairly low ceiling, but provocative, intriguing, ambitious, all those things. So Brandon, you've got the floor, and Adam kind of set a pretty low floor ceiling. So where are you going?
Yeah. So how do I argue if his ceiling is my floor, how does this work in terms of
Just
my
say,
argument?
Then we know
identical.
exactly how many snaps Daryl Taylor's going to play this year.
We know.
It'll be right there.
Yeah.
42%.
So, well, Adam made my argument essentially for me for the floor, but that argument to me is why I think a position change is possible for him, with Devin Bush being relatively injury prone, with him having the athleticism to play both the edge and in space as a linebacker. That's why I think that he could see a higher percentage, just because there is so much competition at that edge spot for a true edge, that it might make more sense for him to be more of the inside backer spot and get him up more around that Nwosu percentage. So I agree with Adam in terms of his argument for his ceiling, because that's my floor.
Right. You guys are right there in that pocket. Now, the inside linebacker thing, that's intriguing. Is this a Brandon concoction? Have you heard this? Have you read this? Have you seen this? Where's this coming from? Because
it's coming from him coming out of college and being a guy who, gosh, he played out in kind of the slot position, covering wide receivers, covering tight ends. So he had that athleticism in his college game. He played that season, on a partially broken leg, which is why he couldn't play that first season. So I just feel like we're getting to see, like, we've got that pass rushing role from him, but we have so many other pieces that can provide that role. I still think that he can do that and be the third down guy and be coming off the edge when that's called for. It's just that I don't see any other players on the team. If Devin Bush isn't healthy, who's going to take that other inside backer role unless they fill it with a safety? So
not a lot of options there.
I think that he naturally fits into that if that becomes a need.
It's interesting. It's a take. It's bold. I think it's the first I've heard of it for sure. And I guess we'll see. I think in our history of floor versus ceiling, which is exactly one episode and one segment now old, the first time you guys ever came dead even to the same exact conclusion, which is kind of fun. All right, let us bounce to category number 2. This one's going to go to Brandon. So last year, we're going to be talking about running back total touchdowns for running backs running the ball, running the football, right? That's the important part, not catching out of the backfield, because I had to go back and do quite a bit of math to get these numbers. Uh-oh. Yeah, I know, right? So at least some of it's wrong. You know that out of the gate here. But last year, we only had 11 touchdowns total. Walker had 9, Penny had 2, and this is not counting Geno Smith's one time that he ran it in, or if there are any jet sweeps, Marquise Goodwin, stuff like that. I don't think he had it. But I bring up the other folks like the wide receivers and the quarterbacks, because teams like the Lions, 23 touchdowns by running backs last year. Cowboys, 22 touchdowns by running backs. Eagles led the league in touchdowns running the ball, but 18 were by running back, and then they had an insane amount, I think it was 13 by Jalen Hurts. Then you get to the Niners, 17, Browns, 15, just trying to give a smattering, all the way down to like the crappy section. The Colts only had 7, Tampa Bay Buccaneers only had 4, one of which was against us. So kind of a big range there. 23, the high mark, 4 to 5, the low mark. Seattle had 11, so they were kind of lower third last year. Now a bit of a revamped running back room. Obviously Charbonnet, McIntosh, DJ still there, K9 in his second year. Hopefully some better blocking. The penchant and the propensity and the desire to run the football. Brandon, what's the ceiling for running back touchdowns this year for our 23 Seahawks?
Unfortunately, I don't know if it's going to be all that much higher than what we've seen. I could probably push to say 17 touchdowns. I don't think it's going to be, and that's, when you point out that the Niners had 17,
right?
That seems like that seems low for them, but I also think that would be high for us, just because I look at Walker, I look at Charbonnet, and I don't see guys who tend to just punch it into the end zone when you're inside the 5, and that's where a lot of those opportunities come from. So unless we see a really big improvement from that interior of the offensive line right away, And that's what I'm counting on for us to even get to 17. So I kind of feel I'm a little bit negative with that number, but I feel like that's an accurate ceiling.
It's a decent jump if you're looking at percentages wise. That's 6 more, which if you do the math, that's like a 50% jump from last year, which is that's significant from where we were
would be a
last year.
whole year of Kenneth Walker where you had him out for that first stretch of the season. So
like
you could
6
even
games.
add on a couple of those ones where he has the breakaway and punches it in from outside the 20.
It'll be interesting to see this one. It might even be a bit of a barometer of kind of the health of the team. Like, where does this number go and how healthy is this team in general? You brought up the interesting part to me was our inability to punch it in the red zone last year on the ground. That hurt us. And you couple that, we'll talk about red zone later a little bit. And, Gino was not great in the red zone. That was where he kind of struggled probably the most out of anywhere in the field. So it's hopefully something's got to give to the positive, but your ceiling is 17. Adam, you got to take the floor. 11 last year. What's the floor this year for our running backs?
I did like Brandon's prediction on the ceiling. I think if they're somewhere in that range, the Seahawks offense is going to be much improved in the red zone, which you pointed out, Clint, not just a Geno issue, but an issue to the offense as a whole. So the reason I'm going to put the floor at, they were at 11 last year.
Yeah.
11. I'm going to say the floor is 8. And the reason why I put it there, and you may be more likely to be closer to 8 than 17. And it's because of the drafting of JSN. And with Jackson Smith and Jigba in there at slot receiver, I think think of all of the little Wes Welker / Amendola, who was their most recent guy? Edelman. That was in the slot there for the Patriots and running the little jerk routes, little option routes, all that stuff where you're just reading leverage and then breaking and, reading a linebacker coverage and things like that. That's something that JSN should be killer at. Like that's exactly his game. And so I think that's going to actually take away from some of the rushing opportunities down close to the goal line. I think they're going to be trying to utilize him along with some of the tight ends too, with Parkinson down in the red zone, another big target. So yeah, I don't know that they're going to have that huge jump. I don't know that it's going to be way less than 11, but 8 would be my.
And it's a pretty low that starts to get into, like I said, Colts had 7 last year and they were a disaster. Yeah. They were bad, right? I realized we're saying floor. So there is the, hey, I really got to give something quite low and try and still try to be within the realm of possibility, hence the floor. By the way, I think you said, did you say, how did you pronounce Amendola's name? You said something
Amendola.
there. Amendola. Amendola, like Mendelbaum. I'm like, what the hell did he just say? So Amendola, right? I was like, wait.
I know Amendola, but I'm more of an Amendola guy.
Got you. You spun me there for a sec. I was head nodding. I'm like, what did he just say? It took me like 3 tries through my brain to be like, what player is he talking about? Oh, Amendola. All right.
Damn.
So
you can see I just flew right over it because that's how I know he pronounces Danny Amendola's name. So.
Who was the what was the long running one? It was a Seahawks quarterback. Was it Tavares?
Oh yeah.
Tavares, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, you both got it wrong. It's Tavares.
I say Tavares. Yeah,
that's how he said his name.
Yeah. I say Tavares. Yeah, that was. I remember that being a long-standing thing that you guys would argue.
Brandon also calls where Las Vegas is Nevada. So
gotcha.
Do not.
I think I'm trying to think. I say Nevada. Yeah, I'm a Nevada guy. So
yeah,
that's because that's how it's pronounced.
Gotcha. Yeah. Good. Whew. All right. You listen. This is an East Coast guy pronouncing West Coast things correctly. So every now and again, awesome. Right. So we had 17 at the ceiling, 8 at the floor. My quick argument there. I know you guys are not. You guys don't seem to see Charbonnet in the way that I see Charbonnet. Yeah, he is. So we'll see. We're gonna have to. The proof will be in the pudding. I think that dude is good between the tackles. I think that dude does move the pile. Oh, yeah. I think he did it in college. And I think
not
he's
near the goal line, though.
He doesn't move the pile. He's good between the tackles when you block for him. Like he's not.
Will be pretty good. I just in general think that I think we're going to score more touchdowns, period, overall. I think it's going to be a better offense. So I just think we're going to see a natural increase.
Okay, here's a take for this running back argument. I would not be shocked if DJ Dallas has more touchdowns than Zach Charbonnet.
That's a take. That is a take. All right, let us move on. That's a good one.
Careful,
Yeah,
that's
careful.
spicy. Yeah.
Careful, Brandon. Very spicy. All right, let's move on now. It is Adams. Back to the ceiling for Adam. We were talking about red zone targets earlier, so this was a nice back-to-back. I like this one. This is DK Metcalf red zone targets, okay? 2022. DK was second in the league. I heard a lot of people say he was first. The data I looked at has Justin Jefferson with 28 red zone targets and then DK with 27. So it wasn't like he was at all. He's right there, right? Either way, very, very top of the hill. The problem was last year, he was only 9 for 27, 33%, catch rate. He did score 5 of his 6 touchdowns within the red zone. So that's pretty good production. But the 33% is bad. I put up some stats that I pulled from the other dudes, which is like Jamar. It's your who's who, right? Stephon Diggs, Jamar Chase, Justin Jefferson. It's the dudes who go first in the first round of fantasy football drafts for a reason, and they're darn good. But their catch percentage is like 55, 52, 60%, way, way up there. DK with a paltry 33%. But 2021 DK only 19 red zone targets, but he caught 72.2% of them in 2021 for 9 touchdowns, right? So is it just luck? Like, I don't know. That's probably too small sample size, but I thought it was such a cool discrepancy to be like, it's some data. So ceiling for Metcalf red zone targets this year, he was kind of king of the hill right up there last year. Adam, how many does he get this year and why?
23 is the ceiling. And again, this is no knock on DK or his ability or anything like that. But with the struggles in the red zone last year, you got to look at what you were doing and being like, well, that didn't work. So let's do something different. If they were targeting DK that heavily, which I completely understand why, with the big frame and the ability to jump out of the building and all the quicks and all the stuff that DK brings. Now, again, we're back to the JSN discussion. We're back to the offensive line discussion with either Olu or Evan Brown being in there with the bigger bodies that are able to push the pile so that maybe those, more goal line situations, you are seeing the running back score a little bit more. And then also too, I'm high on Parkinson this year, and that's another big red zone type target that they can go after there. So I think his ceiling should be slightly less than it was last year if the Seahawks offense is running in a healthy fashion.
23 still a good number because that still puts him.
Oh, that'd be massive.
Yeah. Looking at last year, what do we got? So like when you get down to Stephon Diggs, when you get down to Amon-Ra St. Brown, Stephon Diggs got 23 last year. St. Brown got 22 last year. So it's still pitching towards the top of the heap. Interestingly enough, I didn't put it on the sheet. The year before, I think Cooper Kupp had 32, which makes sense, which makes complete sense for Cooper Kupp 2 years ago. Yeah, that as well, right? Well, at that point, they did have what's his face, OBJ, right, for a little bit. So yeah, what's his face? All right,
Bobby Trees,
yeah, Bobby, that's true too. So all right, 23, pretty solid number. He'd still be towards the top of the league. Brandon, now you got to talk about what his floor in the red zone could be and argue for the why. Go ahead.
Well, it wouldn't be all that much lower because we're seeing it. You said in 2021 it was 19, in 2022 it was 27. Even if you trend back toward that 19 number, you're still giving him a lot of opportunity. He's still in the upper percentage in terms of those the top receivers that you listed. So I would go 18, and for those same arguments that Adam said, you're not going to go completely away from him because he is your number one guy, but you have to look at other ways to spread the ball around. And so, yeah, if everything's going well and he's healthy, you're still trying to get the ball to him more. I guess the argument would be that if the offense is working better and you're getting more red zone opportunities, the ceiling, I think, could even be higher just by having more opportunities.
Yeah, I think the piece for me is earlier. I think by the way, I think it's a pretty good sound floor. Would not surprise me given the running back room, given the addition of JSN. potential emergence of Colby Parkinson in that third year, right? Third year. Yeah. I do think what Adam, you said earlier was, it was a little bit, I don't call it knee jerk, because it's not like he's a rookie, because he's going into year 5, but they looked at 2021. They're like, holy crap. We threw the ball 19 times. He scored 9 touchdowns on 72%. Do a lot more of that. So what do you do now? You did a lot more of it, but you didn't get the same return, down to 33.3%, which I think, again, is like, that's, if there's one area Geno could get resoundingly better in, be like, no joke better, man, it's his red zone efficiency.
And
I mean,
some of
that's
that is through DK's own, gosh, I think about just his inability to get his feet down in the back of the end zone on a couple throws from last season, to where, he was right there. He had the ball. He just didn't get his feet in, and it wasn't any, by any contact through the defensive back. It was just him not being able to make that complete catch. That can fix that pretty easily too. So that could increase his target load if he's able to make those couple tweaks and he gets back to 72%. Heck yeah, you're going to target him more in the red zone.
Yeah, if he's up at 72%, like, the dude's probably looking at 15 touchdowns on the year, or something like that, 12 plus touchdowns, which would be tremendous. You look at DK, he's not the most, this term's out there a lot now, right? Natural catcher of the football. That's like a terminology in football, not so much a natural catcher. He's not. Sometimes he looks a little bit awkward. He's not exactly the most athletic looking while he's in the act of doing something. Now, of course, he jumps out the building. He runs out the building. He's built like he's got a bat suit on. When it comes to the subtle athleticism, that's not his game. Of course, that is exactly Tyler Lockett's game and exactly JSN's game. So we'll see. And even to some point, some degree, Will Dissly has like softer hands than DK Metcalf does. He just does.
One other thing too, with regard, just because this is red zone targets, one of the things that I look at with the numbers, 9 to 27 for 5 touchdowns. You think red zone targets, you think end zone targets, but a red zone target could be a bubble screen when you're on the 5-yard line and the defensive back just comes up and makes the tackle and you're not able to get into the end zone and take those plays out.
It could be a slant from the 18. That you're catching.
It can be a completion and not a touchdown.
Right. Oh, totally. At 100% correct. Right. It's not, we're not talking, but you're right. We're not talking end zone targets. So that's different as well. Right. Obviously, typically the more red zone targets you get, the more end zone targets you're going to earn just from the math itself. So, but good point. All right, so I think we have some premonition here. Either that or you guys saw the sheet in advance, but now we're going to be talking a little bit about Colby Parkinson. So I think, Brandon, this is up on you for the ceiling this time. I think Colby Parkinson is probably one of the easily top 5 kind of most intriguing Seahawks for me going into this year. Like, what are we going to get? He's got the frame. He's got the athleticism. We saw him starting to pop. We saw him starting to pop with more consistency. At the very least, he was a darn good bet on PNW Prop Stars, right? It was like, he'd be like, 1 reception for 8.5 yards. Like, okay, hit the over. Yeah, hit the over. And then lo and behold, 2 receptions, 18 yards, and cash money almost every single week. So he's an intriguing player. He certainly has the size at tight end there. 2021, he only had 5 receptions on 8 targets. Okay. He's just getting going. That's all good as a rookie. 2022, 25 receptions on 34 targets. He 5X's his receptions. Now, I don't expect him to 5X his receptions again and get to 125 here. However, Brandon, what's Colby Parkinson's ceiling and why might it happen that way?
Yeah, well, if you're arguing based on math, then yes, 125 receptions makes that natural progression. It's obvious, right? I think for his ceiling, 25 is solid. If we're going to see a progression, I think 40 would then, because you're talking about taking away snaps from Noah Fant, you're talking about taking away from Will Dissly, and we're also talking about everyone maintaining health. So it's hard to have a whole lot of wiggle room within those snaps with 3 healthy tight ends. But if he's going to be the guy that is routinely if he just ends up being a favorite of Geno, it never ends. out of those three, we never really got the sense, right? Because that was part of the PNW prop stars, is that, oh, whose week is it to be Gino's tight end? And so none of them really stood out. So I would then, if I'm to argue the ceiling, I would count on Colby then becoming some sort of favorite for Gino and to get up to that 40 number. Just because I could see Will maybe taking a step back just because primarily the blocker, no offense, maybe even primarily a blocker, and Colby being the more natural pass catcher of the three. That would have to be my argument.
I think 40 is a pretty, I mean, that to me is a
high number.
Like, holy crap, I'd sign. I know. And again, it's ceiling, right? But it's plausible. And that'd be a nice year because you got to figure whatever, 12 to 15 yards of reception, something like that, right? So you're talking about a 500 to 600 yard tight end, which is pretty nice. And if you're catching 40 balls at his height, 6'7", he's probably getting 3 to 5 touchdowns, right? That just from the sheer likelihood of that pile of 40 receptions. Feels probably high, but again, that's a ceiling. So I love the boldness of it. All right, Adam, not sure you love this one but it doesn't really matter. What's the floor? Why is it the floor? Is it higher or lower than where he was last year with 25?
The floor is about 15, and it would look a little something like this. So the Seahawks are going to play a lot more 11 personnel this year. I think we can all agree on that. So that leaves one tight end on the field. Is Colby Parkinson the guy that they choose to be the one tight end in 11 personnel on the regular? That's the hurdle that he's going to have to overcome. Because Noah Fant is the pass catching tight end out of that group. Like that's what he's known for. He had
50. He had 50 receptions last year, to put it into perspective.
Very quietly, by the way, right?
Right.
I mean, that was
very quietly.
Quiet
very
50.
quietly.
That's not a bad year at all.
And so, Parkinson's going to have to beat him out to be that one tight end in 11 personnel type set. So 3 receivers and 1 tight end. And the other thing would be that would happen to make it so that he ends up around that 15 reception mark is the 11 personnel comes at the cost of 13 personnel.
Right.
And so they're not running the 3 tight ends out there very often. So he misses out on those opportunities. And then you have to have Disley and Noah Fant remain healthy for the entire season. And it's possible.
Sure.
So I still think he would get in, make a little bit of hay now and then, but yeah, if he can't be the guy that they're leaning on in those 3 wide receiver sets, then it's going to be tough for him.
Yeah, and I mean that's a very reasonable floor. The part that is intriguing to me, which I'm not sure matters, but it's interesting to talk about as it might matter, is that when the clock strikes midnight on the 2023 season, Will Disley is a free agent. Noah Fant is a free agent.
Yep.
Right. So it's like, where do they want to, and Parkins is the youngest. That's the other part of that, right? He's the younger dude. I just want to see, it's just interesting. Will the coaches find a favorite this year? And Adam, your point's perfect. If they're in 11 personnel, that means by the math, 1 tight end. And I agree. Sometimes that's going to be Disley. He's the best blocker of the 3. Parkinson improved, but he's the best blocker of the 3. When it's a third down play and it's going to be Noah Fant probably, right? If it's just one dude, probably Noah Fant. So does Parkinson get squeezed? How often do we use 12 and 13 personnel? Probably less than last year. It was very high compared to the rest of the league. And given what we drafted, just going to be a very intriguing position to watch. Can one of those tight ends emerge as like the favorite, or will it simply just be like, no, we don't care. Just put them in a bowl, mix it up and say tight ends are tight ends, and the coaches are super happy. That part to me is super intriguing as we head into this year.
When we talk about favorites, I mean, it would have to be, when you think about some of the top tight ends, and Kelsey's just above and beyond everybody else. He had 110 receptions last year. But if you start looking at the tight ends, even George Kittle probably on the low end last year was 60. And so if you take Kelsey out, you look at Kittle, maybe that's got to be a favorite tight end number. 60 seems kind of low. But then TJ Hawkinson was next at 86, and that was between 2 teams, between the Vikings and the Lions last year. So I think it would have to be in that 60 to 86 catch range if you're considered to be one of the, a tight end, a quarterback favorite at tight end.
I don't particularly see any one of our 3 tight ends sniffing those numbers. I don't know about you.
Because we have 3, and unless we see a jump from Fant, I think he would be the more likely candidate because he's only 10 away, based on a quiet 50, as we mentioned earlier.
Yeah, it's going to be super intriguing. Like I said, to me, one of the most interesting positions as we head into the preseason here, and we'll see. But it's cool that it's also nice that we're totally set there. We got 3 dudes that on any given snap, we're cool with whatever formation they go out with. Literally 11, 12, 13 personnel, power, cool. We have a good, solid tight end room. I guarantee you most NFL fans could not name one of the dudes, but who cares? This is a Seahawks podcast. All right. So let us get into, I think that was your ceiling, Brandon. Is that right? Yeah, that was your ceiling.
Yes.
So we're over to Adam. This
Back
one
to me. This is the snake pack.
Gotcha. We're serpentining and Adam's getting all the ceilings, the whole thing. This one, to me, I wanted to give my best. I'm not going to do a Morpheus voice. I want the people at home to imagine a Morpheus voice, right? But, would you believe if I told you the Seahawks were tied for 5th in sacks last year? I couldn't believe it, dudes. I went back and I looked. I was like, yes, there's a bunch and they get, there's a lot tied at, but they were tied for 5th. So before I even asked the question, Adam, did that shock you at all when you're like, holy crap, they were 5th?
Does this not look like my shocked face? I would have, I'd have been surprised if they were in the top 10, let alone a top 5, tied for 5th. It didn't feel that way. It really didn't.
Yeah. So how about you, Brandon? When you read that, you're like, wait, is he correct about that? Did you go check the math?
Well, tied for 5th, there's, I guess it depends on how you, do the math on that necessarily, because I see 6 teams that had 48 or better.
Right, but they're all tied for
7th.
The way I look at it is so the Patriots and Cowboys both had 54. They were tied for 3rd. The Saints and the Ravens were 48. They were so that just the ties. Bundle,
okay.
Right?
The very creative way at looking at ties.
It's what's the old saying? All ties lift boats or something like that, right? So all the tides lift the boats there. And
but
still,
like Adam said, I would have been surprised if he would have said top 10. So even that they're tied for 7th, it's still a little surprising.
Yeah. So the way you're framing it probably more accurately, tied for 7th with the Jets, by the way, right? So the Jets at 45. This is a vaunted defense. You got Salah running up and down the sideline with his shirt off, and everybody's fired up about the Jets defense. And Seattle tied them with
more
sacks.
than the 49ers.
More, yeah, that shocked me too, right? That absolutely shocked me too.
And Commanders.
If
you would have told me had more sacks than the Niners and Commanders, I would have said no way.
I couldn't believe it. Now, again, the Eagles, by the way, different stratosphere. They had 70, which is insane. And the Chiefs are right there, 55. So, lo and behold, there's your Super Bowl, which, by the way, made me just chuckle. Remember how bad the field was? How horrible the field was in Arizona? It was the Eagles literally, nobody could, but the Eagles could not get a grip on, they couldn't rush the passer. That would have been something useful against Mahomes in the Super Bowl. But anyway, so we had elite and then very good with the Chiefs and the Patriots and the Cowboys. I'd say those are the elite and the very good. Then there's a big conglomerate, and Seattle's at the top of that next wave, basically, which is good. That's definitely solid. So long preamble for this one, but I thought it was I just think most people, we follow the Seahawks a lot, and we're like, holy crap, tied for 7th or 5th, depending on how you do the math. So Adam, ceiling, Seahawks this year, where do you think they're going to land with total sacks? And then maybe just, put them in a range for, whatever they are, 10th, 15th, 3rd. What do you think? But total defensive sacks for our Seahawks in 2023.
64.
Ooh,
and
spicy.
That puts them around, I don't know, 3rd or 4th in the league. So that would be my,
probably
maybe
1st
higher.
or 2nd. Yeah.
Okay, sure. Depending on how the other teams perform, of course, and all that. So the reason why I think the ceiling could be very high for this team is, again, Nwosu, another year in the system, a fantastic signing. And is this a contract year for him?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think it is.
Yeah, he signed a 2-year deal.
Oh, he is.
Yep, you're gonna be getting a very motivated Nwosu. Darrell Taylor's got something to prove this year. He needs to crack that double-digit sack mark and, make a name for himself on this roster so that he can get paid going forward. Derek Hall, while not a super bendy dude around the edge and that sort of thing, his one trick that he really is great at is the long arm and just a power bull rush.
Yeah.
That catfish translates. Like you don't have to be, anything special other than what you already are to go ahead and implement that then in the NFL. But the biggest piece of it all is the addition of Draymond Jones and bringing Jaron Reed back. Two guys that can really put some pressure on the passer from up the middle. And that's just going to raise all boats for all the pass rushers. And you start getting that synergy all the way around. And you factor in Witherspoon, Woolen, Adams, and Diggs, and the third safety, whether it's going to be Love or however they decide to do all that. Man, they could have the quarterback holding the ball just a half tick longer, and sacks could go up in a big, big way.
That would be a huge jump. And the one name you didn't mention in that whole mix there is also Bobby. Bobby had 6 last year.
Did he really?
Yeah. He had 6 and 2 interceptions. One was a fake interception against us, but no, that's okay. He had 6 sacks last year. Now, will we use him similarly and blitz him the way that the Rams did? I don't know. I'm not really sure because we don't blitz that much. We just don't. We talked about that. We don't stunt that much. We don't blitz that much. And that to me is why I think that ceiling pitch is high. If we get anywhere near 50 or so, 55, huge year, considering we just don't blitz. We're lower third every single year very recently. So that would be very interesting because that means we're creating a lot of pressure with 4 dudes. And back to what you said, Adam, where the nickel, the dime, whatever it is, they're doing a heck of a job. Quarterback's going to hold it longer, and we're just getting home with some of these dudes this year. So definitely a bold ceiling there, but that would be huge. If that number comes to fruition, we're winning a lot of football games, which would be very cool. All right, Brandon, you got to take the floor on this one. So again, last year we were at 45, I believe. Yeah. And so where's our floor this year and why?
For a lot of the reasons Adam mentioned, I think 45. I'll go down to 44 for the floor this year, just because.
Love it.
I'll drop one.
Wow.
But I'll make the argument in a different way. Adam mentioned a lot of the guys up front and then just kind of threw in Witherspoon at the end. I think the addition of Witherspoon is what helps make that floor the floor, because if you have dudes in the back end who are covering and covering well, quarterbacks, they had an easy time last year because they either threw at the linebackers or they threw at Kobe Bryant or a little bit of Mike Jackson. They had a place that they tended to like to go, especially on third down. And so with not having those opportunities, potentially, if Witherspoon is covering better, if you have more safety coverage with Love out there, then I don't see the floor getting that much lower than 44. And the other name we didn't mention too was Brandon Jordan, who was brought in to coach these guys on the defensive line. And so how would they get worse than if they're bringing in one of the top defensive line coaches in the league?
Yeah, it's intriguing, and that Brandon Jordan thing, the bootleg guys talked about him a lot. They were like, "Hey, this is a big deal. Like this to get him from MSU was bigger than you think," which is quite interesting. Adam, I know you got something. What you got?
I think Brett Coleman's probably going to propose to Coach Jordan here anytime now. I mean, he couldn't love the guy more. Yeah, which is so exciting because Brett knows football inside now, and he knows the coaches. So if he's saying this guy's legit, he's legit. But the way that it could go even lower than what Brandon's saying is if all the effort to improve the run defense doesn't come to fruition. And so now
we just get jellied,
and they just get
jellied, and so they're not passing the ball as much. So you don't have as many opportunities. But secondly, it's keeping you in second and manageable, third and manageable. Quarterback's not holding the ball, not long developing routes, a lot of quick hitters, things like that. Quarterback's getting it out of his hands. So as much as people love focusing on the passing game in this league, and I get why, it's a lot of fun. it all starts and stops with the run game and whether you
They
can run it.
Run last year, they had 45.
I mean, it could get worse.
It could always get worse, right?
Yeah, I mean, they could play the whole year like they played for 2/3 of the year.
Yeah.
But it's a very interesting point, though. And the thing I'll go back to, as we talked about last time, is we looked at some of the stats. And the last time we did a floor versus ceiling, where we talked about, again, we did not blitz heavily. We didn't even run stunts heavily. And we still were tied for 5th or 7th, depending how you do the math. Either way, top 10 easily, 45 sacks. And now we've got better DBs. Like, I just want to see us be a little more exotic. I just feel like we got the dogs. We got the coverage. You brought back Bobby for like the solidness, the base there to like, hey, don't mess up in the middle. Okay, Bobby's got that. That's cool. And if you bring Jamal back, or Jamal gets back healthy, more better said. I just want to see us be a bit more creative and exotic with what I think is a slew of athletic talent sitting there. So the 64, again, it's a ceiling. It feels high. However, I won't be shocked if we're in the 50s. I just won't. I think that'd be such a nice jump if we're sitting there 52, 53, and we're just known as a team that, like, yeah, we're going to get home a couple times a game, because and then get home in the fourth quarter and get the strip sacks. Like that's when you win. That's when you put games away in the fourth quarter, and there's nothing better than that, right? You're up 4, a team is starting a drive. They're at their own like 37-yard line. It's like 2nd and 7. And then all of a sudden Nuosa comes around the bend, strip sack. We fall on it. And then we go score 7 and ice the game. Fellas, is there anything better than that in football? I mean, isn't that just the grandest thing?
Just that drive you score the touchdown on. It's a 12-play drive.
Yeah.
You run it 7 times with super efficiency, throw it 5 times, and you make the score and you eat up time. Yeah, man. That's just taking control of football and making it your bitch, basically.
And in short, winning is better than losing, right? So, which is always a good thing. Cool. All right, we got one more category. We just talked about Bobby Wagner. I do think, I mean, either way, again, put it on the pedestal of like most intriguing players. As he goes, the Seahawks will go in some ways this year. Very, very interesting. I want to look at his solo tackles. So Bobby Wagner last year, and I'm not even sure this counts, in that stupid uniform with the stupid number, they call them Magner, it was turned upside down. He had 81 solo tackles last year. His high as a Seahawk, high watermark was 97, but in 2021, he had 93. Quite a lot of solo tackles. It's interesting if you look at the best years for the Seahawks, 2013 through 2015. Yes, a younger Bobby and not quite the dude yet. That's the LOB era, and then it became the Bobby era. But his lowest solo tackles happened to be when we were the best football team, which was interesting, something to talk about, right? So I think Brandon, I think you get the last ceiling, right? So
yeah,
solo tackles.
Nope, it's mine. I just took it.
Okay. Mr. Bobby Wagner, back to Brandon. What's his ceiling and why is that the number?
Here's the thing with the ceiling argument on this one. It's not even a fun one to argue the ceiling for, because as you pointed out,
right,
if it is a high number, then it's generally looking bad on the rest of the defense. When he was just one of the top dudes, like you're saying, in the 2013 to 2016 range, 72, 67, 67, 85.
Right.
Like that's good and healthy, because other guys are coming up to make plays. You have Cam Chancellor making plays. You got Earl Thomas making plays. You got, other dudes coming in to make tackles. KJ Wright. So it spreads around. You go back to that year in 2021 when it was him and Jordan Brooks making all of the tackles.
Yeah.
Jordan Brooks had 109 solo tackles that same year that Bobby had the 93.
Yeah.
So if I'm going to argue ceiling and Bobby's having a full healthy season, it could be his highest number. And it could be a very bad thing if he has 105 tackles, because that means other teams are jellying it on the Seahawks defense, and Bobby Wagner has to be the guy there to make the play every single time.
Right. This is the exact conversation I was hoping we'd have. So what is your ceiling then? Because it's not just about Bobby. It's about your take on what do the Seahawks look like and how does that impact Bobby's ceiling?
I would put it at 105, which would be
Wow.
his career high. It would be lower than the Jordan Brooks had that season with 109, and that would be because I couldn't put it any higher than that just because of Bobby slowing down a few steps. But I still think he could have over 100 tackles if that ends up being what happens.
And I think it might be, disastrous if he has that many solo tackles. Probably
be his final season.
probably not a great thing.
Why does Bobby come back and say, "Oh, I want to do that again"?
Yeah, exactly. So Adam, maybe you got the more fun of the two to actually argue floor for this Bobby one. So what's his floor and what's your logic getting there?
Floor's around 60 or so, and it's basically just the reverse argument of what you guys have been talking about. The guys up front are able to shed blocks. They're keeping Bobby clean, and they're actually the ones that are in pursuit and, making a lot of those tackles. Also, that would mean that Jamal Adams had a full and healthy season and was playing down in the box and eating up a lot of those tackles and being the game wrecker that he can be. So you kind of combine those things, and it would probably, like Brandon said, prolong his career. What's Bobby got another 150 tackles left in him? 200? I don't know.
Yeah.
However many it is, I'd like to spread it out and keep him around for a while. But I don't think it's going to be much lower than that, because I think as long as Clint Hurt and Pete Carroll were paying attention to wherever it was that Bobby was playing last year, the team that shall not be named, they never used him in coverage, very rarely.
Right.
They really did focus on keeping him down and playing downhill, blitzing him a lot more in passing situations rather than trying to ask him to cover. I imagine the Seahawks are going to take a page out of that playbook and really try to play to what Bobby's strengths are now, which is literally strength.
Right. That's him and Derek Hall both, right? That's their game is strength, which is cool. 60 that'd be pitching super low, and it could be a good, like you said, could be a good thing. If that's
be awesome.
If he's healthy all year and he's getting 60, it's not like he's got 20 missed tackles. He's Bobby Wagner. That's not why that's at 60. It's because somehow, some way, the interior part of our line is doing a really good job, right? That's it. I think our edges are pretty set, but that's not typically going to be the Bobby Wagner land anyway. If they're escaping that far outside, typically, right? He's not going side to side like he did, to now, 7 years ago, 8 years ago, and that's a weakness, or at least it's a big question mark. So yeah. It's interesting.
This has to be the one that has the potential for the largest variance in a lot of ways, because we're all banking on the improvement of this defense on the interior. And I mean, we haven't seen it yet.
Yeah,
I mean, we can believe it all that we'd like, a lot like Pete believing in Geno going into last year. I mean, he was all in and on board, and I'm sitting there going, what are you talking about, bud? It's Geno freaking Smith. And the hope turned out to be right. Let's hope that that's what we get with this defense this year, because it is taking Pete and Clint's word for, what it's worth, and saying, yep, they're going to be better. I'm not even worried.
And I'd say the thing that's, it's not so much more worrying. It's just the reality is it's not like the preseason is going to tell us. These are not the preseasons of the past. Yeah, there's a couple of young dudes, Cam Young, sure. Like, he will play in the preseason. He's a rookie. Go play, dude. Go figure it out. At least some. But like, we're not going to see a lot of Draymond Jones. It's just, your 17, $18 million dude. You're not going to see a lot of him. So you're not going to see a lot of Jared Reed. You're just not.
So not see Wags.
No.
I mean,
so
why?
It's going to be kind of like week 2 versus the Lions and being like, okay, can we stop them at all? Is David Montgomery just crushing us? Is Jahmyr Gibbs now just running all over us? It's going to be intriguing. And we literally won't know until a couple of weeks into the season, which is a little scary to be, if I gotta be a little honest there. It's not the 85 Bears. We ain't, right. So it's interesting. But this was an interesting dialogue. And one thing I wanted to put out to the flock too was I think the floor versus ceiling conversations are cool. I could keep coming up with categories, but if you got categories you think you want to hear us discuss, heck, throw them out to us. Doesn't matter if it's on Facebook, on Twitter, just leave Brandon and Adam a voicemail, send an email. it doesn't matter. But if you're like, oh, this would be a cool category, we just need 6, and then we could have a fun discussion and put it together. So would love to get some categories, flock sourced out there from our
3 more
peeps.
weeks.
Yeah.
We got
Another
3
way to
more
do
weeks
it is
That's right.
to go to getintheflock.com,
Yes.
join and become a member of the flock. Then you get into the Discord, and then you can tag Clinton within the Discord and get in touch with them there. If you have to really be able to either blow up your screen to be able to read the text behind Clinton.
Gotcha.
But yes, patreon.com/flock. If you do become a member of the flock, I just posted on Sunday this week that tickets available. So those are going to be exclusively for members of the flock for our game against the Commanders that Adam and I will be going out for. So we have tickets available for a group game, and you can find all the details up there. Getintheflock.com.
Sweet. Awesome. Well, and of course the YouTube, the Facebook, everything that's out there. And of course the audio. So it's funny, I am digesting more and more YouTube. However, Adam, you said last time, you're like, I think the flagship's just more enjoyable as an audio format. And I was like, you know what? He's right. Because it's just longer form. That's like the one I could pop in and be like, all right, I've got to go run like an hour and a half of errands, and then you guys are on my journey. It's awesome. I'm with you. You're with me. I'm with you, and you guys are in my ears. Yeah, it's really really kind of nice. It's perfect for that. Whereas other ones, the shorter format ones, and we're doing more video. It's all good. So a good mix. Subscribe on the audio. Subscribe. Download it. It all helps. Drop the comments for sure. And boys, This is, I don't know if we're just getting older. I know we're getting older. That's how time works. But this off season has been fast. I mean, we are coming up. This is it. We're about to hit, camp in just whatever, like 13 days or something like that. Right. So camp is coming up. I'm fired up. It's going to be a good one. And, we're going to steamroll into the season and have a lot of fun this year, fellas.
And with that,
There's only one thing left to say.
Go Hawks.
go Hawks.
Go Hawks.